right, good morning everyone. Welcome to Pisgah Legal Services Facebook Live event, What You Need to Know About Evictions. My name is David Bartholomew and I am the co-director of the Homelessness Prevention Program here at Pisgah Legal Services. I want to start by talking to you a little bit about the eviction moratoriums. I know that's been a huge source of confusion for people really all throughout the country, judicial officials, reporters, and especially tenants who are wondering what their rights are. And so hopefully I'll be able to clear that up a little bit for you. It is confusing, so I'm going to kind of take my time going through things. And we will be taking some questions in the comments. So if you have any questions, put them in there, and once I have finished in 15 or 20 minutes, I will try to answer them as best I can. Of course, I cannot give legal advice over Facebook Live today, so don't put any personal information in the comments. But if it's a general question, if it's information, then I can try to answer those questions for you. So the CDC moratorium, of course, not the first moratorium. That was the CARES Act back in March of 2020. But the CDC moratorium was issued in September of 2020. And what it was is an administrative agency under the Trump administration, finding that they needed to prevent evictions, really to prevent the spread of the virus. When the medical advice is to stay at home, stay safe, obviously it's very important to have your home and be able to stay in it. So that was the rationale for a moratorium on evictions throughout the country, and that was originally in place until the end of 2020, and since then it's been extended several times. Most recently, in late June, to go through the end of July. I'm gonna stop every couple of minutes just to put some links in the comments. But one of the reasons that still is kind of the basis for having the moratorium, I know a lot of people seem to think, oh well, it seems like the pandemic is over, but of course we still have 50% or so of North Carolinians that are not vaccinated, and we're finding that those that are not vaccinated are most at risk of eviction. So that's a link I put over there from Eviction Lab that sort of shows some of that data. Okay, so this is going away, and it will not go away until the end of this month. And at that time, we're pretty sure it will, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I want to talk about what the moratorium is. I think a lot of people who are tuning into Facebook Live might be familiar with the CDC moratorium, but just in case you're not, who does it apply to? What kind of evictions does it apply to? It applies to non-payment evictions, okay? So if you're behind in rent and you're trying to make good faith payments and you didn't make more than $99,000 during 2020, or $198,000 if you're filing a joint tax return. You applied, made your best efforts to get housing and rental assistance that you're eligible for, and you were unable to pay rent due to a loss of household income, loss of hours at work, a layoff, or extraordinary out-of-pocket medical expenses. And if you tried to make partial payments as close to the full amount due, and if you don't have another place to go, right? You don't own another house or have another lease at another place. Those are the things that need to apply to you in order to avail yourself or use the CDC eviction moratorium. So when we talk about what do you have to do that, is it you just have those conditions met? No, you actually need to go and fill out a CDC declaration affirming that these things apply to you. I'm going to post a link of the latest one. Many courts are accepting older versions. It doesn't have to be this exact form that I'm going to post over here in the comments, but all of the things in this form do need to apply to you in order for you to be protected from evictions and summary ejectment actions in North Carolina. So the Supreme Court of the United States finally did issue a ruling last week, and they upheld the CDC moratorium through July 31st. And it was a 5-4 decision, and Justice Kavanaugh made it pretty clear that it will not be approved after that. And of course the CDC also in the press release, when they did extend the moratorium to July 31st, noted that this would very likely be the end of it. So we have every reason now to expect that this moratorium is going to end in about 24 days. And so it is extremely important that you use the moratorium declaration that is linked over here in the comments and available on pisgahlegal.org, and go ahead and fill that out and get a copy to your landlord if it applies to you. If the time is now. It's been around for a long time, but some people haven't known about it. Some people haven't needed to use it. And if it applies to you, we want to encourage people to go ahead, fill that out, and submit it to their landlord if it applies to them. So the next thing I want to talk about is just to clear up some confusion. If you were Googling North Carolina eviction moratorium in the last week or so, you might have pulled up information that said the NC moratorium was over. And of course, that is technically true. There was also an additional moratorium issued by Governor Cooper. And what it really did was it enhanced the CDC order by requiring landlords to give the declaration that's linked over here in the comments that I just was talking about. It required them to send those out to tenants when they were terminating leases and filing summary ejectment actions. And it also required them to swear and affirm in an affidavit with the court that they had given the tenants that. And that was what the North Carolina eviction moratorium that Governor Cooper, those are the main points of it. There were a few other things. The additional requirements on landlords to comply with, and that has ended on June 30th. That order expired. It was not renewed. And so what you have is a lot of confusion and headlines about the North Carolina moratorium being over, and the federal moratorium being upheld by the Supreme Court, which, it's pretty confusing. I think these things came out basically on the same day last week, and trying to kind of work through it was not easy. But the thing that you need to know is there are not the same requirements on landlords, but the moratorium is in place. So all of the stuff that we just went over with the CDC, the federal order preventing non-payment evictions, that's going to still be in place until the end of July. And so that's, I think, the most important thing to take out of that news. And so I'm going to put a link here, and this is from the NC Court website. This sort of covers that. If you're calling a clerk or there's some confusion, this website should clear it up for you. This is how the courts in North Carolina are handling it. Sorry. Okay, so now that I've kind of explained hopefully made it a little clearer, it is very confusing. Multiple moratoriums, that's just a kind of a hard thing to unpack. But what are we facing right now? And right now, we don't have the most recent studies, but as of May of 2021, it was estimated that 6.7 million renters in the United States were behind. And on average, these renters were 3 months delinquent and owe more than $4,500. And that's from Moody's Analytics, some of their economic data. I'll post something that links to that here at the end of our discussion. So what we're seeing as far as anecdotal evidence with clients that we have, let's call this person Sarah. She is $3,000 behind in rent. She was working doing sound for music clubs. Of course, they have started to reopen, but not really, and not as busy. And so she's that far behind, and now facing, in August, she was eligible for the moratorium. She's facing a huge amount of money and no real way to get that back. I'm going to put another stat. Well, the most recent thing that we found is that 1 in 5 renters living with children are not caught up in rent. So this is a lot of families. This is a lot of vulnerable people who are going to be facing, or at least we think might be facing, the loss of their home later this fall. And there's that information I put over in the chat. So what are we going to do? We want you to call Pisgah Legal Services if you're getting lease terminations, right? And you might be eligible. If you're in our service area and you think you might be eligible, we want you to go to pisgahlegal.org and apply online. We want you to call us. We want you to reach out to us sooner rather than later. If you get a lease termination notice, you need to try to call us. If you're not eligible, we'll give you referrals and we'll link you to information about this. If you haven't received an eviction notice from a court, we do encourage you to try to work with your landlord. The other main thing that I want to emphasize today is that there's a lot of rental assistance out there. If you are behind in rent, it's important, very important, that you call 211 today. Don't wait till tomorrow. Don't wait till next week. Don't wait till you get a lease termination. Go there today if you're behind in rent and see if you're eligible for the rental assistance. There are millions of dollars out there that need to go to tenants so they can pay their landlords so they can stay in their homes. And it's really extremely important. If there's anything today, two things that I want people to know is that the moratorium is still in place for July. So if you are eligible for it, please use it. And then if you are behind in rent, we really need you to get your application in. It's taking them a long time. So even if you're thinking, well, my landlord's not going to file till August, or I think it's going to be okay, go ahead and get in line because it is taking a long time to administer, to see if you are eligible for some of this assistance. Pisgah Legal Services is preparing to help as many tenants in Western North Carolina as we possibly can. We have been awaiting the end of the moratorium. We thought it might happen in January, we thought it might happen in March, and so we have been preparing to, courthouse projects, calling people on dockets, just trying to reach as many people as we can who are facing eviction. The truth is, this is an unprecedented event, and we do not know exactly how many evictions we're going to see. We know that the numbers have been pretty low. The moratorium has been effective in many ways at reducing the number of evictions. But when we read stats like, 1 in 5 people with children, 6.7 million people, and on average they're 3 months behind, we have every reason to expect that we're going to see a huge increase in summary ejectment filings and evictions in Western North Carolina. And so we are gearing up, and we are going to be there. We're going to be trying to reach as many people as we can. And so the only other thing I wanted to sort of add about that before I take questions is if you do think, if you're not in our area and you can't call Pisgah Legal Services, you're not eligible, there are defenses out there for you. If you think that the landlord is trying to illegally evict you, or is not respecting the moratorium that's in place, you can contact, I'm going to post a link here, but the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, they are taking complaints, and so I'll put a link over in the comments where you can do that. But we are hoping that there's going to be enforcement. There already has been some enforcement actions against bad actor landlords, and we think that might be an avenue for some of you to consider if you're not able to talk to us. But obviously we prefer you talk with us first. We can inform you of your rights and see if we can get you connected with resources in the community that are available, and hopefully avoid the eviction. So with that, I'm going to see if there are any questions over here in the chat. Don't see any. Okay. Well, there's a lot of cards to play here, a lot of things that we're going to wait and see what happens, but we want you to contact Pisgah Legal Services. We are going to be ready for the end of this moratorium, and I hope, okay, there's actually a question. I hope you do reach out to us. So yeah, if this question is about if you get an eviction notice. So like I said before, if you get a termination notice from your landlord, you need to contact Pisgah Legal Services immediately to see if you're eligible for services. If you get served with court papers, you need to contact us that minute, right? There are deadlines to respond, hearings are scheduled, appeal deadlines pass, so it's extremely important that you don't waste any time. Are there other questions? Yeah, so there's a question coming in about whether or not you will still owe rent money. Did the moratorium do anything about that? And of course, the answer to that question, unfortunately, is that yes, you will still owe the money. The moratorium was a public health measure. It prevented people from being homeless. It prevented people from being out on the streets, but it did not do anything about the money owed. So when I say people owe more than $4,500 on average, that's because it doesn't forgive that. Just because the evictions couldn't take place, it doesn't mean that you won't eventually owe that money. And that's why it's extremely important to call 211 to make sure you contact Pisgah Legal Services if you can. But the rental assistance that's out there is going to be necessary for you to try to catch up. And if you're eligible for it, that's going to be the answer. But in a lot of people who aren't eligible for it or don't know about it, or if it does run out, those people are going to end up owing a lot of money. So I'm hopeful that something will be done about that, because the moratorium, is helpful as it has been as a public safety measure, is not going to help all of Western North Carolinians catch up. Can you get an eviction removed from your record? Not really. There is no, I think that's one of the things that Pisgah Legal Services is advocating for, is a way to do that. The collateral consequences of an eviction. Many people in Western North Carolina are facing this for the first time, and it's down to the pandemic, really no fault of their own, and now they're going to have a filing maybe show up on a property management search that could cause them not to get a new place and cause them not to be able to emerge from the pandemic in a healthy way. So there is no way to really expunge it. If you have a dismissal or you're able to come to an agreement with your landlord to conclude your case, you can often show that to property managers. But that is something that I think many states have tried to address, and I think with the pandemic and the number of evictions we're expecting to see, that we're hopeful there will be something done about that so that your record could be cleared. Yeah, so there's a question about the landlord being required to give the declaration. No, that ended on June 30th. So for the rest of this month, landlords are not required to do that. The tenants need to know that they must take advantage of it themselves. They can hit this link here in the comments. They can go to the CDC or pisgahlegal.org and get a copy of the declaration, and it will still work, but landlords are no longer required to send that out with the complaint or file an affidavit with the court. Pisgah Legal Services is not really doing financial assistance at this time. I don't have the numbers from Buncombe County. I know that there's still money. I don't know. I really don't have that information on what level it is. Yes, the CDC declaration is available for Spanish speakers. That is also on our website, and hopefully somebody else can post it because I don't have it pulled up. It'll take me a minute, but if I can't post it while live here, I will make sure it's posted in the comments after. All right, any other questions? Okay. Well, thank everyone for coming to Pisgah Legal's Facebook Live. I hope everyone's doing well out there, and we'll see you next time.